Okay, so now let's look at a couple of examples of dividing a polynomial by another polynomial. So first thing I want you to do is I want you to look at this and I want you to see how it's different than the other problems. Now it says we're dividing a polynomial by another polynomial, not by a monomial. When you see this word by, it's basically whatever comes after this is what's coming after the division sign. So here we're dividing by this thing. So whatever comes after the division sign, that's what we're dividing by. This is not a monomial, it's a polynomial. So in the last couple of problems that we did, after the fraction line was like the divide sign, and what came after the divide sign? A monomial. So then you do it one way. But now we're dividing by a polynomial. The thing that comes after division sign is not a monomial, but it's got more than one term, so that's a polynomial. Okay, so we're taking a polynomial and we're dividing it by another polynomial. When you do a problem like this, there's a few things you need to do. First, you need to make a division box. You know, like when you divide things, you put this division box here. The polynomial that comes before the division sign goes inside the box. The polynomial that comes after the division sign goes outside the box. But before I write them down, you have to make sure that you write them down in the correct order. In other words, I'm going to put this polynomial inside the box, but I have to make sure the terms are in the right order. What order do you have to write them in? You have to write them in such a way that the powers on the letter, on the x, are going down. So you start with the highest power term, and then you work your way down. If you look at these terms, the first term, the power on the x is a 1. When you don't see a power, it's a 1. But the power here is a 2. This has a higher power, so that term has to be written first. So what I have to do is I have to take these terms and I have to switch the order. Now, we did talk about in this class about when can you switch the order of terms, and when you're adding or multiplying, we had commutative property of addition, commutative property of multiplication, which means if you're adding or multiplying, you can switch the order of terms. But there's a subtraction here, and I still need to switch the order. So what do? Well, if you have additions and subtractions and need to switch the order, you can still switch the order, as long as when you move things around, if there's a sign in front of it, you take it with it. So this 18, if I want to move it somewhere else, I can move it anywhere else I want. As long as this minus sign in front of it, I take it with it. So I can move the minus 18 and put it anywhere I want. Same thing here. This term is positive, this middle term. So when I move it around, if I write it somewhere else, as long as I keep it positive, we're okay. This term here is also a positive term. So if when I move that around, as long as I keep it positive, we're okay. All right, so I have to write the highest power term first. So this term first. So 30x squared goes first. Then you're going to write down, so what's the next highest power term? This one has power 1. When you don't see an x at all, that has power 0. So think of that as power 0. So power 2, that goes first. Power 1, that goes second. Again, it's a positive term, so I'm going to put plus 28x. And then when there's no power, again, power 0, we're going to write that one last. And again, make sure you include the minus sign, minus 18. So you have to rearrange the terms a little bit and put that term inside the box. Okay, same thing with the polynomial that goes out here. You have to put this polynomial out here. Make sure you write it in such a way that the powers are going down. Think of this as power 0 because there's no x. Think of this as power 1. The power on the x when you don't see 1 is a 1. So this is power 1, this is power 0. Power 1 term has to be written first. So the 3x is first. And then plus 4 because it's a positive term, plus 4. Okay, so you write this polynomial there, write the terms in the correct order. Write this polynomial there, write the terms in the correct order. All right, once you have that down, then you just have to follow a 3-step process. So here, let me do the steps over here. So the first thing you're going to do in your 3-step process is you're going to divide the left term here by the left term here. So the left term inside the box divided by the left term outside of the box. So you do 30x squared over 3x. Okay, 30x squared over 3x. And now you're just dividing monomials. So you divide separately. You divide 30 divided by 3, that's 10. When you divide the x's, you subtract the powers, 2 minus 1, so it's going to be x to the 1. And x to the 1, I'm not going to write the 1, so it's just 10x. Okay, so the first thing you do is you divide that by that, get the answer, and you write your answer on top. So I'm going to write the 10x over here on top. Okay, that's the first step of the 3-step process. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to take the 10x you just found and multiply it by the entire polynomial here on the left side. So you can do 10x times 3x plus 4. So you're going to multiply that out. So how do you multiply polynomials? You bomb, or you can just say we distribute. Either way, you're going to multiply the 10x by the 3x and then the 10x times the 4. 10x times 3x is 30x squared. 10x times 4 is 40x, so plus 40x. And then you write this polynomial on the bottom over here. Okay, so let me make sure I get where I write this polynomial correct. When you write these terms underneath here, I want you to write them in such a way that you have like terms line up. So this 30x squared, what does it end with? It ends with x squared. So I want to write it underneath the term here that ends with x squared. That term ends with x squared, so I'm going to put it underneath that, 30x squared. And then when you write this term, it ends with x. I'm going to write underneath the term that ends with x. This term ends with x. I'm going to put it here. So plus 40x. For example, if you were doing another problem and instead of saying plus 40x, this said plus 40, it would have no ending. So I write the plus 40 underneath this because this also has no ending. Okay, so if this was plus 40, I'd put it here. But because this ends with x, I want to put it underneath the other term that ends with x. Just so we can avoid mistakes. I want these to be like terms and these to be like terms. I want like terms to line up on top of each other. Okay, so that's the end of the second step of the three-step process. The third step is that you take these two terms that you just wrote down, you switch the signs. This is a positive term, so I'm going to make it negative by putting a minus sign in the front. This is a positive term, I'm going to make it negative by just putting a minus sign in the front. And then you add. You add straight down. When you add 30x squared plus negative 30x squared, or you can just think of it as 30x squared minus 30x squared, they cancel. The first terms will always cancel if you did this process right. Okay, so since they cancel, I'm not going to write anything there. Over here, we're going to do 28x minus 40x. 28x minus 40x, those are like terms, so we can simplify it. That gives you negative 12x. Then you do minus 18 plus 0. There's nothing there, so you just basically write down minus 18 there. So you can think of just dropping the minus 18 down since there's nothing here, or you could do negative 18 plus 0, and you would get negative 18. Okay, so that's the three-step process. Now the only thing you have to do is check to see if you're done, because you might have to keep going or you might be done. How do you check? You need to see what the degree of this thing is, and then see what the degree of this thing is. What's the degree of this? Degree is the highest power on the x, so the degree of this is the highest power. What's the power there? It's a 1 when you don't see a 1. So the degree of this is 1. And then what's the degree of this thing? The degree of this thing is also 1. Because you're looking for the highest power on the x power on the x is a 1. Is this degree less than this degree? That's the question you have to ask yourself. The answer is no. If this degree was less than the degree of this thing, then you're done, and you can just tell me what the answer is. But because the degree of this is not less than that, you have to start over. Start over means you have to do the three-step process all over again. So let's do it again. So now you're going to divide, but you're going to use this polynomial instead of that one. So you can divide the left term here by the left term here. So you do negative 12x divided by 3x. Once again, you're dividing monomials. Do negative 12 divided by 3, that's negative 4. When you divide the x's, they cancel, or if you want to think of it another way, you can think of subtracting the powers. It's 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So you get x to the 0. X to the 0 just goes away. So you get negative 4. And write your answer on top. That's the first step. So let me just recap that part there. So you take the left part term here, divide by the left term here, get your answer, write it on top. Okay, then the second thing you do in your three-step process is you take the number you just got, the negative 4, and you multiply it by this entire polynomial over here. So negative 4 times 3x plus 4. And again, you bomb it or you distribute it any way you want to think about it. We do negative 4 times 3x, you get negative 12x. We do negative 4 times positive 4, it's minus 16. Okay, so that's the end of your, well, that's almost the end of your second step. Then you take this polynomial here and you write it underneath this one. Again, write it in such a way that like terms line up. So it's negative 12x, it ends with x. So I'm going to write it underneath this negative 12x, that because they both have the same ending. Then this minus 16, it has no ending. I'm going to write underneath the term that has no ending. This has no ending. So I'll put it here like that. So just notice I have like terms here lined up and like terms here lined up. Okay, so that's the end of the second step of your three-step process. The third step is you take the thing you just wrote down and you change the sign of each term and then you add. So this is a negative term, so I'll make it positive. Just put a little line there so it looks like a plus sign. This is negative, again, I'll put a little line here so it looks like a plus sign, and I'm going to add. When you add those, they cancel. You get negative 12x plus 12x, they cancel. Again, the first terms will always cancel if you did it right. So I'm not going to write anything down there. Then negative 18 plus 16, you get negative 2. Okay, so we're done with the three-step process. Now let's just see if we're done with the entire problem. The way you do that is you check to see what the degree of this is and see if it's less than the degree of this thing. Now when there's no letter at all, the degree of a number is 0. So the degree of this is 0. The degree of that is 1, like we said before. Is the degree of this less than the degree of this? Yes. 0 is less than 1, so that's definitely correct. The degree of that is less than that. So we're done. So now you just write down the answer. So here's the answer. The way you write your answer, it's going to be this blue polynomial that I have up here, so 10x minus 4. Then plus this over this. That's a little weird, but you have to remember the way you're going to write that down. So it's going to be this plus this over this. So you write this down and then you're going to write a fraction. So you're going to write plus this over this. Now I'm not going to put the plus sign here only because this term is negative. If this term was positive, I'll put a plus. If this term is negative, I'm just going to put the minus sign right here. So minus and then we'll put 2 over 3x plus 4. The only other way you could write is this could be a plus, and you could put the minus here. So it's, one more time, this plus, so you put a plus there, this, so they could have a negative 2 up here, over 3x plus 4. But this negative and on the 2, I just took the negative and moved it out to the front and put it there. Okay, so that's the answer to that one. Alright, so let's just recap real quick what you do when you're dividing a polynomial by a polynomial. Again, if you divide a polynomial by a monomial, you do it the way we did in the other examples. But if you divide a polynomial by a polynomial, what do? First thing you do is you draw a division box. Then this polynomial is written inside the box, but make sure you write the order of the terms correctly. The powers need to go down, 2, 1, 0. Then you write this polynomial over here outside the box. Make sure the powers are going down, power 1, power 0. Then you go through the 3-step process. Once you're done with the 3-step process, check to see the degree of the polynomial you get over here. And if it's less than the degree of the polynomial over here that you're dividing by, you're done. If it's not, you go through the 3-step process again and again and again until finally the degree of the polynomial you get at the end is less than the degree of the polynomial you're dividing by. And if that happens, then you can just write the answer, and the answer is always going to be that plus that over that. And of course, if there's a minus sign, instead of putting a plus, you can just put that minus sign over there. So it'll be that minus this over that. Okay, let's look at one more example.